I watched WrestleKingdom 18 on Thursday. I always get my Match of the Year list started early with this show, early in the year. This year was no exception. And we've already got an early contender with Danielson and Okada. We also had multiple title changes, and between this and New Year Dash the next night, the debuts of two former WWE stars. And I really love watching this show every year. The Tokyo Dome is a great setting, especially when you've got that hot crowd and the waning minutes of a big main event. This year's main event didn't have the marquee value that past main events have had, even though this one had a lot of history between the two men involved. But by the end of it, because the people badly wanted to see Naito win that IWGP title and get his moment, they had that building rocking, and it felt like a classic WrestleKingdom main event. Tanahashi wants to sell out the Dome next year because the show falls on a Saturday instead of the usual Thursday. The last time they came close to selling it out was 6 years ago. They did 43,000 in the building with the stage setup being what it is. They had 27,000 this time, but it was shot so well it looked packed. This is my first time hearing a full show with Walker Stewart on commentary. If you don't know, he replaced Kevin Kelly as their new lead English announcer. He's only 21 years old. He's got a very distinct voice that takes some getting used to if you're used to listening to Kevin Kelly. And he's a little more subdued when it comes to his excitement level, but I thought he did a really good job. And Chris Charlton is a great partner for him to have because he can fill in whatever knowledge gaps there may be. But he knows the stories and he knows the names of the moves and all the key stuff. And, Rocky Romero is always good on commentary, but I was impressed. It's a big spot for someone so young and for someone who's still learning. But for his first WrestleKingdom, I thought he did a hell of a job. Great-O-Khan, Ishimori, Toru Yano, and Yo were the final four in the opening Rambo to go on to New Year Dash to challenge for the King of Pro Wrestling title, which Ishimori won the next night. I don't know what has happened to Yo. The man is out there in a tracksuit and socks. Then somewhere in here, his socks disappeared and he was barefoot, and I could not understand why. Between that and the fact that he looked baked, maybe he's been hanging out around Matt Riddle. I don't know. I'm going to talk about Matt Riddle in a little bit. Francesco Akira and The Fiend won the IWGP Junior Tag Team titles from the Bullet Club War Dogs, Clark Connors and Drilla Maloney. For all the talk I've seen about how great Akira and TJP are as a team, I thought the match was good. I didn't think it was anything terribly special. I mentioned in my preview that Akira and TJP, they had lost to the War Dogs on the Road 2 tour on one of the shows, maybe about, I don't know if it was a week or a couple of weeks before WrestleKingdom, in a coffin match that ended with TJP being stuffed into a coffin. So for their entrance, he emerged from a coffin, but he was wearing this weird claw on his hand and a mask that made him look like he was cosplaying as the Fiend. Actually, when he got to the ring with that hat on his head that he had, he looked like Raiden from Mortal Kombat. And when he took the hat off and he showed us the mask, he looked like Baraka from Mortal Kombat. Apparently, it was supposed to be based on a Filipino monster called the Aswang, which is a blanket term that is used for various evil creatures, I guess, in Filipino folklore. I was intrigued by this, so I looked it up, and it seems that these Aswangs, they have a thing for babies. The viscera sucker is attracted to the fetuses growing inside pregnant women. And then I read that on one television show, there was an episode that featured an Aswang that sucks the amniotic fluid out of a pregnant woman's stomach. That's enough internet for me today. Let's move on. We're not even 10 minutes into the show. We've already gone off the rails. President Tanahashi, in his first official act as the president of New Japan, won the television title from Zack Sabre Jr. This guy's got balls, I'll say that. He's already 1/3 of the never openweight 6-man champion, so not only is he the new president, but now he's got 2 titles. When they first introduced that TV title a year ago, they said it would encourage faster-paced matches because of the 15-minute time limit for all title matches, and it would focus on younger wrestlers. I wouldn't call Tanahashi a youthful 47-year-old, not with those knees. But I will say he looked better here than he has in a lot of his recent matches, and I think the time limit had a lot to do with that. It kept a brisk pace. I enjoyed this, and they kept Sabre strong in defeat because Tanahashi's win came as the two of them were exchanging roll-up attempts. And Tanahashi got lucky, and Sabre lives to fight another day, and probably for a title higher up the card would be my guess. He's falling upwards, you might say, like Hangman Page in AEW, dropping 2 straight to Swerve Strickland and probably ending up in a title match soon with Samoa Joe. It also gives the TV title some shine by putting it on somebody of Tanahashi's status, but I would not expect him to hang on to that for very long. Yuya Uemura picked up a win over Yota Tsuji, 2 young men who New Japan are banking on to be part of their next generation of headliners. I don't think this is going to be the final time that we see these two in the ring together on a dome show. Tsuji is more impressive than Uemura. He'll go farther faster, I think, but I can see the potential in both of them to eventually carry New Japan into the next decade. Kaito Kiyomiya continues his losing ways. First, he loses to Okada last year at the Muto retirement show, which was also at the Tokyo Dome. He failed to win the G1, and now he loses at the Dome again. And he lost in another tag match the next night at New Year Dash. I'm not sure what Pro Wrestling Noah gets out of this, considering they're grooming him to be their next ace. But here he tagged with Shota Umino, another young star New Japan is banking on big for their future, in a losing effort against Evil and Ren Narita, representing the House of Torture. It's too bad. The match itself, if you just focus on the in-ring action that we got, I thought it was good. Until the bullshit finish, which is a staple of the House of Torture. I think the torture is in reference to how they make the fans feel. Tama Tonga wins the Never Openweight title for a 4th time from Shingo Takagi. This is after he beat Carl Anderson at the Dome last year to win the title. That was when WWE let Anderson fulfill his obligation to Gedo to drop the belt. This was a fun, hard-hitting match. Tama winning surprised me because of the media scrum after he announced that this will be his final month in New Japan because he misses his family and he wants to be closer to home. So then why put the belt on him? Hopefully this means Shingo is moving on up. Tama's been working in New Japan for 14 years. He's 41 years old. He's given them his best years. And if the man wants to move home to be closer to his family, I can understand that. And I do think WWE would have an interest in using him. Before the tag team title match, Nick Nemeth, the former Dolph Ziggler, and his brother Ryan, they made their way out through the crowd in suits, took a seat in the VIP section at ringside, which is not something I was expecting to see. I love how they trotted them out there before the tag match, though. Everybody assumed that it was a sign that, they're going to be, together as brothers and a tag team. They're going to be challenging for the titles, but they only swerved people into thinking that because they stuck around for the next 3 matches before they shot the angle they did with Nick and David Finlay, which is the real reason why he was out there. But in the tag match, Hikuleo and El Phantasmo beat Bishamon to retain their New Japan Strong tag titles and to win the IWGP tag team titles. Not to unify them. So now they have 2 sets of tag belts. I thought it was good. Never reached that level of great, but I thought it was fine. El Desperado beat Hiromu Takahashi to win the IWGP Junior Heavyweight crown. Not the outcome I was expecting. And not at the level of past Hiromu title matches that I have seen, but still very good. We had Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley, and David Finlay in a triple threat to crown the first ever IWGP Global Champion. Moxley and Ospreay, they had agreed to a 5-minute ceasefire at the pre-show press conference so that they could work together to beat the shit out of Finlay and give the people the match that they really wanted, which is Ospreay against Moxley one-on-one. And they mostly adhered to the ceasefire. Ospreay is leaving New Japan next month. He's going full-time to AEW. Moxley is already full-time with AEW. Finlay is the lone New Japan talent left, so it made sense to put the belt on him, and they had an excellent match. This was not the balls-out all-timer that you would, expect maybe from Ospreay that he's had in the past at the Tokyo Dome. But it was still excellent. The best match on the show up to this point. Moxley bled, because of course he did. The War Dogs, late in the match, they hit the ring. Gabriel Kidd and Alex Coughlin. They attacked Moxley and Ospreay. This built to a double table spot outside the ring where Ospreay came flying off the top rope to the floor with a swanton bomb. The table that Kidd was laying on, that didn't break, and he sort of rolled off of it to the floor. But Coughlin, man, those Japanese tables, they have a personality of their own. They are a mean old prick. They don't like to cooperate. And instead of breaking in half, because the bulk of Ospreay's weight landed on Coughlin, it put him through the table, but only his ass. They broke a hole in the center of the table, and he ended up stuck in the hole, which made this way funnier than it was meant to be. I've never seen that before. I've never seen that on a table spot before. Ospreay hit Moxley with the Stormbreaker. Finlay, though, broke up the pin. He dropped Ospreay with a brainbuster onto the knee, and then a knee to the back and a knee to the face to finish off Ospreay to win the title, making David Finlay the first ever IWGP Global Champion. I like the way the Global title looks more than I do the new Continental title that AEW just introduced. In a week of new titles, I give the edge to New Japan. Now, the idea coming into this that David Finlay would beat Jon Moxley and Will Ospreay, and then would have a brawl with Dolph Ziggler, on paper, sounds like something that would make a lot of people's eyes to roll in the back of their head. But it worked. The match was great, and when it was over, Finlay and Geto, they sauntered on over to where Ziggler and his brother were sitting, and Finlay yelled at him. Nick got up at his face, so he got shoved and spat on, and a huge brawl erupted. Both men had to be pulled apart. After the show in the media area, when Finlay was talking, Ziggler came flying in over the tables. He tackled him. They fought briefly again until Finlay and Geto escaped. And Nemeth was left behind. He spotted the Global title laying on the floor. So he picked it up, and he talked about how much the title meant to him, and he doesn't even work there. This was unintentionally hilarious, not only because this was his first night doing anything with New Japan, that this title would mean so much to him, but the title was literally just introduced that same night. And he talked about this belt like it was defended for decades by fucking Inoki and Shono. He went a little overboard there, but he showed a lot of fire. And later on, he calmed down, he was interviewed, and he apologized to the fans and to New Japan for his behavior. He said Ospreay and Moxley laid it all out there for that title just to show what the Global Championship means, and I thought it was a spit in the face to the fans. Technically, I don't work here. I'm an observer on the outside. He's attacking a fan. I feel like I'm standing up for the fans and saying, hey, if you're going to take the cheap shots, someone's going to knock you on your ass. And again, I'm sorry, I was out of line. I lost my cool because I felt that everything that was laid out there in that match was something special. It took me back to a time when I was a kid, and you just know what these wrestlers go through on a day-to-day basis. And to have a chance on a giant stage to prove that you are this brand new title holder, that title deserves better. And that's all I should say. I apologize to the fans, and New Japan Pro Wrestling is a beautiful show. I am so sorry I lost my cool. I apologize. Dolph Ziggler spent the last 20 years of his career with WWE. I mentioned Tama Tonga a moment ago, 14 years in New Japan. Dolph has him beat, 2 decades in one company. He started with Ohio Valley Wrestling in 2004. And in that time, he won the World Heavyweight title twice, the NXT Championship, the Intercontinental title, the United States Championship, the Raw Tag Team titles, the SmackDown Tag Team titles, the Money in the Bank briefcase. He owns one of the greatest Money in the Bank cash-ins of all time. And yet somehow, even with all of those accomplishments, he still felt underappreciated. He felt like someone who was on the cusp of breaking out a few different times as a legitimate main eventer, but they would either get gun-shy and they would pull back, or they just never saw him at that level to begin with. I think he was a little too good when it came to his selling and his ability to make other people look good, and that could be a detriment to you. I think Curt Hennig was a victim of that too. But he had a great career in WWE. He made a lot of money, which is probably why even when fans were on the Ziggler train and they were telling him he should leave, right? Leave and show the company how good you really are. Then you'll come back an even bigger star like Drew McIntyre did. Although he didn't leave on his own, he was fired. But he came back a bigger star than he was before he left. And funny enough, who was the first person they paired him up with when he came back? Dolph Ziggler. They made them a tag team, not to get Ziggler over, but for Ziggler to help get McIntyre over. But he stayed. Despite all of that, he stayed and kept re-signing and re-signing. He made his choice. Now he's 43 years old. He doesn't look like it. I mean, the man looks like he never ages. We know he can still go in the ring. He's obviously coming in to work with Finlay soon. He may be coming in for one match. He may become a regular. We don't know yet. But Ziggler as a semi-regular in New Japan, tearing it up and showing the world what he can do, is something I can get on board with. I'm here for it. And this doesn't mean that he can't also end up working for AEW, right, where his brother works. I'm sure Tony Khan would love to have Nick Nemeth. Maybe he could split his time between both companies. I don't know what the man wants to do, but I would love to see what Nick Nemeth can do on his own. Leave Dolph Ziggler in the dustbin. I only wish he would have done this sooner, but you know what? Better late than never. I think he would be a great pickup for New Japan. He's the release that shocked me the most from all the WWE cuts in September. And then we had Bryan Danielson, one-on-one with Kazuchika Okada. The rematch from Forbidden Door, Danielson's first match back in Japan at the Dome since 2004. I really liked their first match, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it the way that I thought I would. You know, Danielson got his arm broken with 10 minutes left in the match. They had to change a lot of the stuff on the fly. And as great as that crowd in Toronto was, I love those Canadian crowds. It can't compare to getting to see these two wrestle at the Tokyo Dome. Okada came out on stage. He stood in front of a black light that went up and down. It slowly scanned him. It changed the color of his jacket. I thought that was pretty neat. Danielson came out to his AEW music. The only thing missing was Final Countdown. There's nothing better than a sadistic Bryan Danielson looking to extract revenge. You know, when he has a grudge with someone or he just hates someone, he decides to torture them. It's so different than the Daniel Bryan we got in WWE. Case in point, take a look at his strap match from All Out against Ricky Starks. Here, he was out for revenge for the broken arm and the broken orbital bone, and they blamed it on Okada even though he got his eye broken by Andrade. But they put the heat on Okada for it since they wrestled in a tag match a week later. He was a vicious SOB here. He was targeting Okada's Rainmaker arm. Okada went after his eye. Eventually, he pulled the eye patch off. It was everything I was hoping for Forbidden Door. You know, everything I was hoping Forbidden Door would be but wasn't is what this match was. This was the better of the two matches, easily. And Okada gets his win back on his home turf after Danielson tapped him out the last time. I'm not sure it really needs a third match. You know, for political reasons, they might be happy to keep them at one win apiece. But I wouldn't mind seeing it, you know, maybe on neutral turf this time. Wembley would be a good place for it, but I think Nigel McGuinness is going to get Bryan Danielson on that show. And if so, I don't want them doing anything to mess that up. Because I feel like we were going to get Danielson and Nigel last year had Danielson not been hurt. So I don't want to mess that up. But I thought this was the match of the night. Which is not to say I didn't like the main event, because I did. But it wasn't better than Okada and Danielson. The main event was Tetsuya Naito challenging Sanada for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. Sanada is an interesting case. People have talked about his potential for years. I remember predicting that he would win the New Japan Cup in 2020, and he would go on to win the Intercontinental title later that year. Neither of those things happened, but I thought that might be a stepping stone for him. Fast forward 3 years, and he becomes the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. You know, it's not as if he didn't have some really good matches last year, but he came out here on this show, and it just felt like nobody cared. You know, he was all about Naito and Naito's story. Nobody cared about Sanada. He felt like an afterthought. And I think that's why this didn't resonate with me as like a big-time Tokyo Dome main event. You know, there were some clunky moments where he and Naito were not on the same page, especially on some of those Destino attempts. But they got it together, and they ended up having a very good match. They had a lot of heat in those closing minutes. The people were loud. They wanted to see Naito get that win, and he did. Naito finished his story before Cody did. If Cody wins the title at WrestleMania, though, he still will not have waited as long as Naito did to finish his story. Going from being demoted from the main event spot at WrestleKingdom in 2014, when they had the fan vote on which match people wanted to headline the show, to losing his match to Okada in 2018, to beating Okada in 2020, but then having his moment immediately ruined, and now finally in 2024, 10 years later, he wins the title and he gets to do the roll call for all the members of LIJ. That's a 10-year story arc right there. That's what you call long-term booking. They got this great shot, too, of the belt laying on the mat in focus, with Naito laying on the mat in the background all blurry. And then they switched focus to where the belt became blurred, and they focused in sharply on Naito. It's probably another reason why I like the Okada-Danielson match better on this show than Forbidden Door. New Japan's production work is just top-notch. I'll put their production work up against anybody. WWE has a bigger budget, and so they have the fancy 3D graphics, and their production is very slick. But I love New Japan's production. When they sent Evil out there after the match to attack Naito before he did the roll call, I knew someone was making the save. And I knew that there would be a lot of people wanting to put their fist through a wall. Which is why the swerve was so great. It's like WWE sending Jinder Mahal to the ring as the former WWE champion they teased on Raw. And some people, too many people actually believed that he was going to be the big announcement. But then they went and sent The Rock out there to make the people lose their minds. When Sonata made the save for Naito, what a pop. And chance for Sonata. They cared more about him then than they did when he walked out to start the match. And then we got the shot of Sonata as he was leaving, hand over his face, crying as he walked to the back, just like Okada cried after he lost to Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom in 2012. That image of Okada crying as Tanahashi did air guitar in the ring in the background, that's still etched in my brain. And then he came back and he finally beat Tanahashi at the Dome the following year. But the Naito and Tanahashi wins on this show, it felt like, to me anyway, it felt like last hurrahs for two men who may not have that many more marquee matches left in them. They've had a lot of injuries. And Naito's not that old. What is he, 41? I think he might be the same age as me, but he's had a lot of injuries. He's had the eye problems. He's had surgery on his eye 3 times. I think, and they told him that you can only have surgery 3 times. After that, that's it. And he's already had his 3rd surgery. So, between that and the knees and the style they work over there, they're very beat up. When you look at the younger talent they have, though, the pieces are there for what should be the next generation of New Japan stars. And I would include Sonata in that. Even though he's in his mid-30s, he only got his first run with the title last year. I think he's lacking that emotional arc to his character that other top stars have had that make you really care about them. But if he can find that, and I don't know, maybe him crying after the main event, maybe that'll be the turning point for him. When he started crying, I was shocked that he could actually show real human emotion. He doesn't do that very much. Maybe that could be that moment for him. Could David Finlay become their next Jay White? The jury is out on that, maybe. Kaito Kiyomiya, I think, could eventually make the jump from Noah to New Japan, and he could absolutely be an IWGP champion one day. And then they have guys like Tsuji and Uemura and Umino. I'm not as familiar with Ren Narita's work. Maybe you could throw him in there too. But I think the future looks bright, and they had to. They had to get their act together at some point and start trying to get over a whole crop of new stars instead of relying on the same faces, because their bodies are just not going to last. It's amazing that Okada is still putting in the work that he is, and he's as young as he is when you consider everything he's accomplished so far. But from the Tokyo Dome to a gymnasium in the span of 24 hours, the next night was their New Year Dash show, sold out. I actually like it when they run these shows in the smaller venues. They don't ever announce anything in advance for these New Year Dash shows. The card is always a surprise. And it was a newsworthy one. Tanahashi had a match to open the show that included a spot where he got his tights pulled down. And I got to see more of the president than I ever care to see. I'm no intern here. I shouldn't be seeing that much of the president. After the match, a video appeared on the Tron as Tanahashi was leaving, showing someone training, but we couldn't see his face at first. And then it was revealed to be Matt Riddle. Free from his non-compete, Matt Riddle just wrestled Jacob Fatu last night for MLW. And the two of them had a very good match, which is not surprising. But Matt Striker was something else. I did see the clips of that. Matt Striker, during the match at one point, these were actual words that left his mouth during the match about Matt Riddle. He said, "How do you let this guy go? This guy is a star, a mega $1,000,000 star. I don't care what he does. How do you let him go? This is our coup de grace right here." I don't care what he does? I don't care what he does is certainly one position that you could take. Evidently, WWE cared. But Riddle here, though, he cut a promo on Tanahashi. He challenged him to a match. After the promo, Tanahashi got on the microphone. He said, "I have no idea who that guy is. So I will have to go back and do some research first." The shade that was thrown at that man from the president of the company. I don't know who this man is. See, now it all makes sense. They didn't do their research first. That's why they brought in Matt Riddle. Especially since he's flying to Japan next month for their February tour, for their New Beginning events. So he is going to Japan. It's not just that he's working the show here in San Jose this weekend. My question is, will he even make it out of the airport when he lands? You know, they're very strict about that stuff over there. Can he fly over there without winding up behind bars? I know consuming marijuana in Japan is not a crime, but possessing it is. They could throw you in jail for up to 7 years if you're caught with it. With Riddle, there's a lot of baggage. All right, he had allegations of sexual assault levied against him years ago, from even before he signed with WWE. WWE supposedly investigated it. They found no reason to cut ties with him. But even after that, he's posted things on social media that got WWE a lot of unwanted attention. The airport incident in September is what ultimately got him fired. Despite all of that, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And he was doubly stupid because it came the week before the merger went through with Endeavor. It was almost like waving a sign saying, "Fire me." Riddle has said in the past that it was a goal of his to work New Japan, so it's not a surprise to see him end up here. He's already been announced for their Battle in the Valley show this Saturday. It's going to be Riddle and a mystery partner taking on Zack Sabre Jr. and Bad Dude Tito. Watch the mystery partner be Rob Van Dam. Shingo Takagi challenged Jon Moxley to a match at their Battle in the Valley show next weekend, which Moxley accepted, and he proposed they make it no disqualification. Evil attacked Tama Tonga and cut his hair, which should set up a never open-weight title match between the two. Probably with Tonga dropping the belt to him, since he's already announced that this is his last month with the company. I'm just happy they've got Evil challenging for the Never title and not Naito for the IWGP title. Will Ospreay, after United Empire and the War Dogs went to a no contest, announced that February 11th in Osaka, that's going to be his final New Japan match. I assume he means under contract, because I expect him to be back wrestling matches in New Japan, as his AEW deal will allow. But for now, this will be his final New Japan match, February 11th, and he wanted it to be standing side by side with his brothers-in-arms, the 5 of them against David Finlay and his 4 partners, and he would even let Finlay pick the stipulation. And Finlay said he wanted it with no rules, no disqualification, inside a steel cage. That is going to be the first steel cage match, if you can believe it, in New Japan since 2004. And in the main event, Okada teamed up with Bryan Danielson, Jon Moxley, and Tomohiro Ishii in a loss to Zack Sabre Jr., Mikey Nichols, Shane Haste, and Kosei Fujita. After the match, Sabre talked smack to Danielson. Danielson went off on him in a promo after in the back. So that rematch is coming.